Management accounting focuses on predicting future performance and then going on to make decisions based on those predictions. So the balanced scorecard is the first topic with a focus on driving financial performance. Although, as you'll find out, the balanced scorecard takes a much bigger, richer picture of the organisation rather than just financial numbers. So let's make a start. So as I said, we're now looking at management accounting with its focus on predicting future performance and making decisions based on those predictions. So there are three broad techniques which we'll be looking at in the coming modules. First of all, the drivers of financial performance itself, and then using financial information for forecasting, predictions if you will, and then making decisions based on that. And the last modules we'll be covering in this training will be looking at business cases and investment appraisal. So from here on in, a different flavour and a different thrust to the work that you and I have done together thus far. So, identifying financial information for performance management, and this is where the balanced scorecard comes into its own. And as you can see from this graphic, the balanced scorecard is based on 4 perspectives. Starting with the customer perspective, then you'll be pleased to know we'll be looking at the financial perspective, along with the business processes perspective and learning and growth perspective. I'll be explaining what all these mean in the coming slides. So what is the balanced scorecard? Well, it's been around for about 25 years, and it was invented or evolved, if you will, two financial academics, Dr. Robert Kaplan and David Norton. This happened in the early 90s, as you can see. And the research they were doing was based on the need to predict future performance by harnessing more than just financial information. So the balanced scorecard is a performance measurement framework, if you will, that pulled in extra strategic non-financial performance measures and used these in partnership with the more traditional financial metrics. And the name of this tool came about because it was seen that it gave managers and business executives a more balanced view of organisational performance. And the thrust of Kaplan and Norton's work was that they were trying to unearth, if you will, measures that drive financial performance, called leading measures, if you will. And these are the 4 perspectives I've mentioned briefly here. Now, it's an absolute fact that a well-run and successful organisation will have a clear mission supported by objectives and strategies that are aligned across the organisation. If you're not sure whether your organisation does, then by all means ask around. I'm sure there will be, at the highest level, missions, objectives and strategies that are captured and enshrined, if you will, on the path that your organisation is treading. So the balanced scorecard identifies leading measures that drive financial performance, rather than just use traditional financial data. I want to give you a very good overview showing the reasons why and the how of the balanced scorecard so that you too can use it when you find yourself involved with any strategic or financial decision-making matters. So basically it looks at 4 steps, if you will. The first being customer-driven. How do customers see us? And this little graphic would actually be a form, if you will, a template with the heading customer perspective, and you'd work with various managers looking at goals and looking at how those will be measured, writing them down so we all have a common understanding of what those goals and measures are. Next up, we take the financial perspective and ask the questions, how do we look to shareholders? Since ultimately they're our financial customers, if you will. Again, they'll capture goals and measures. I won't go into detail here, otherwise I'd need to have about 4 modules on the balanced scorecard. Next up, based on that information thus far, what must we excel at? Something called internal business perspective, because that's what we're looking at here. Again, goals and measures. Notice the arrowheads here go both ways. So if you're sensing already this is somewhat iterative, you'd be exactly right. The third area is called innovation and learning perspective. And the question we're asking is, how do we continue to improve and create value? And yes, you've guessed it, that flows back to the original question of how do customers see us? So this is very much a structured, iterative process. normally carried out in workshops with appropriate managers and or specialists invited. And because of the context of me describing the balanced scorecard, i.e. from a finance perspective, let me just draw that out a little more if I may. I've already said that shareholders or stockholders, they are ultimately our bosses, if you will, since without their investment, it's hardly likely our business would not exist at all. So working backwards from them, we'd want to look at an area called revenue growth. And these, if you like, are the goals and objectives from the previous slide, the 4 key areas you'd want to look at. Coming back from shareholders' interest again, productivity objective. Wouldn't you want to make sure that your people are working productive? And if they're not, help them with that in some way? Of course you would. Going back to revenue growth, how would you break that down? Well, developing new revenue sources. For example, identifying new or emerging markets. Still on revenue growth, improving current profitability. How do you go about doing that? Again, this type of information would come out in a detailed workshop. So that's the 2 strands of revenue growth. There's 2 for productivity as well. Here's the first, driving down costs. As we know, costs are subtracted from our profits. And if we can continue to grow the business while decreasing costs, that again will be of particular interest to shareholders. And finally, on productivity, resource optimization. Are there smarter ways in which we could share resources, for example? Sharing them across organizations, having common pools of expertise, and so on and so forth. So as you might imagine from this very high-level diagram, although these are the key areas you need to be aware of, how you go about doing this would vary greatly depending on the nature of your business and what you're trying to achieve.